Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. We're going to go through a short review of CM evolveIT, Lunch and Learn. I hope you enjoy the session. And we're also going to make this a little bit informal. So if you would like to speak, feel free to raise your hand or send us a chat comment and we'll enable you, or you can just send us a comment or question and we'll answer your question along the way here. So let's keep this informal. So to get started, I think most of you know, but we'll just quickly review. We are CM First Group, we're headquartered in Austin, Texas. We do also have offices in France and Switzerland. So we do cover Europe, and also we cover Asia also. So many partners here, Broadcom, of course, CA Products, IBM's a partner, and we also work with Help Systems and Cincha. As you see, we've obviously worked with many customers over the years and continue to help both in the software and services area for our customers. So quick review of our mission. We are, focused on building the most reliable, rapid, and cost-effective enterprise software tools to optimize and transform mission-critical applications. So I'm Roger Hammer. I'm the product owner for CM evolveIT. I also manage services here at CM First. So let's get into the tool. I'm just going to cover real quickly. Obviously most companies are doing either maintaining their applications and or modernizing. And of course, most are doing both. So they're focused on continuing to maintain the applications they have and improving them, maybe modernizing them in place. Or some companies are working to move certain functionalities off of the platforms and systems they have today into new hardware and or software platforms. So we're going to talk a little bit about maintenance, but also all of this functionality really applies to modernizing. As you do that modernization, you certainly need to understand your applications and how they fit together and where your functionality and particularly data usage many times is within those applications so that you can accurately move that functionality and reproduce it in the ways that you need. So just a statistic out there, we obviously all spend a lot of time maintaining the software that we've developed over time, which leaves much less time to develop the new functionality that businesses need to grow and expand. So one of the key points here, of course, is that as we look at CM evolveIT, consider the savings in time in the analysis phases and the potential reduction of performance issues, if you have those, and how the ability to identify and better understand and visualize your application will make a difference in your day-to-day work and also your modernization efforts. Keep in mind, obviously, as we view lots of diagrams and reporting capability, that at least for me and many of the customers I talk to, we spend a lot of time communicating about what we're going to be changing, and having a picture, as we say, is worth 1,000 words. So we'll go through and talk more about that. So this is evolveIT. We're having kind of an expanding ecosystem here at CM First. And so we are taking source repositories from your Plex 2E or mainframe applications. And so in evolveIT, we're actually parsing that data and building meta models out of that information so that you can interact with those models about your application in fast and accurate ways. So we'll take a look at that and understand how that works in just a moment. Some of the use cases we're going to cover today, we're going to touch on impact analysis, maybe quite a bit. A lot of what we do kind of relates to impact analysis in some way or another. We're going to identify table usage, so we kind of can go top down, we can go bottom up with our analysis. And then we also have the capability, newer capability for custom code search. So looking at and identifying information in your action diagram code, both local and the full set. We'll also take a quick look at data flow paths and identify how those work. We will also end this session with a quick view of some new functionality that we're building. So we currently have a customer portal on our support website that can be used for uploading your models and your source code, but we are enhancing that, and I'm just going to give you a preview of the functionality that's going to be there to help make that much easier, both for customers that are active and also for someone who wants to just trial evolveIT. You can go to that site and upload your information, and that will get built into a cloud instance, and you will receive back the application access with your credentials for that. Okay, let's jump into evolveIT and begin some analysis work. Okay, so this is kind of the front page of evolveIT. It's a dashboard showing us what we're working with. In this case, we're working with a Plex application. That happens to be the database name. The date that we collected the information in evolveIT, and then what do we have here? How many schemas? What's the count? What's the function count? So really useful basic statistics. As we drop down into the view here, we'll see some of the function count information. And we see in this case, we have 2925 in the standard functions, GUI functions specifically, 397, and some API functions, 2% of the total, which is 54. Now, key areas probably are going to be in the areas here of the action diagram. So you've got the GUI functions here, the percent, 63%. Sorry, let me get my view opened up. And then we've got 25,000 GUI functions in the action diagram, and also a large number of standard functions here. So moving on, we're going to just take a quick view through some of the side menus here. So this is the menuing structure for CM evolveIT. And so there is I'll just quickly show you, there is a numerical summary page of that information in detail. And then we have information about menus. So if you've got menuing systems within your application, those can be added in and connected to the rest of the functionality, and we can review those. Within the objects themselves, within your models in your code, we have the object browser showing us functions. We can review the database schemas, the columns within those, message information, detailed source code information, entities, and then we have this area of business terminology. So this is a manually entered area where you can go in and define the business terms for those columns within your database, so you have better, more meaningful names there that you can view. Beyond that, we're going to look at document search, and that's going to give us, again, a way to search for anything really within our action diagrams. And then we'll talk a moment about some of the object management, because we have a little bit of information in here from the perspective of properties that we've added. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, let's get started. Really from a top level, we're going to look at some simple menus, and I'm going to expand these and just kind of take a look. These we've created here. So let me go down here and take a look. So the first thing we're going to do is expand from this menu and get a view of the functions that are being called from that menu. And then we have the ability to graph or view that information. So I'm just going to bring it up as a neighbor perspective. So we've got here a menu with the GUI functions that are related, and then we can expand where we want to here. So here's some function calls from this GUI function. I'm just going to pick a few of these, and we'll expand this view so we can now see each of the functions called below. And we can continue this process and walk through any level of the application. There's one without any further details. There's one with quite a lot, 77 functions. And again, we can just choose one or two and add those to our diagram. Obviously, we're thinking in terms of, where is this flow going? How are we, where are we interested in finding results about our application? And I will say this view is very helpful at the top level, but you'll find as we go into the kind of the table column view that many times you'll want to do this analysis bottom up rather than top down, because you're going to be looking at your data and how that data will change, and then we'll find all those functions that use that data. So there we go. We have a DB schema, and it's going to read it. So now we have one schema that's being accessed by this Java. Let's just take a quick look at that and see if there's anything else accessing, and it is. So we now see that there's one function that deletes in this schema, one function that inserts, 8 of them reading, and 2 of them are updating. So let's just add these updates in. And now we see that one of those was here and the other is down here. So now we've got a read, and we can see the information here on the key. The function reads the DB schema, so the color of the line tells us what we're doing, and the red is showing us the update. Okay, that's kind of the top-down menu perspective. Let's go, well, maybe one other thing here. Let's take a quick look, see if we have action diagram information in here. Okay, that one does. So we've got our full source code for action diagram, no local source code in this case. So let's take a quick look at a few others. See if we've got some with both. Oh, that one doesn't either. Okay, we'll come back to this and take a deeper look once we get into the bottom-up perspective. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the more of a bottom-up perspective now. So we can go in here and begin with in this case, a column. And we've got all these different object browser areas have the ability to search. So if I want to search for a specific column, I can do that if I know what that column name is, or even a partial column name. I'm just going to click search here, and we'll see all of them at the moment for this application. We get a full list, and then we can click on, again, since we're at the bottom level in the data, we're talking about looking at a backwards path for this information and understanding where does this data get used. And so it's being used by a number of these entry functions. We see the full list there. We see any menus related, the other functions, and then the schema information for that particular column. So what I'll do is I'm just going to graph this first level. And so we see the column, we see the table. And as we did before, we can continue to expand any of these that we want to see. So let's just pick the updates. And we're going to add all of these functions that are updating this table. And again, we're focused more on the bottom up now. So let's pick one of these that gives us a calling function. And so now we're just working up the path. So we found our column, the table it's related to, all of the inserting, in this case, Java functions. And so we can walk up the chain and begin to find any other functions that are in the path. So I'm just going to add some of these real quick and kind of give you a perspective. Obviously, these can grow quite large, and we can start at different levels and add everything if we want to. But those diagrams can get very large, and many times they may have functionality, the viewing that we don't want. And so we can either build it this way, or we can build the larger diagram and kind of remove those areas that don't interest us. Go up one more level here. Looks like we have 3. functions from there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is choose some information here. So this is my starting point. Now I can choose at this top level my endpoint. And when I go back down here and click graph, now I get a view of only those elements that I started with within the path between that endpoint column and the starting point at the top in this Java GUI routine. So you can see the power of being able to focus in on this call tree path and then being able to drill in, for example, into the action diagrams, finding out what's going on in the action diagram for that particular function. All right. Let me back out of this area and let's take a quick look at the schemas. And I want to point out something here that's really helpful. So I mentioned earlier that we have this under object management, we have this capability called properties. So we have the ability in evolveIT to add information that's not in your model, that's not in, for example, your source code. In this case, we picked out using some SQL statements, some queries, I should say, the record count for each of those schemas. And we were able to add in the record count, and now we understand based on the selection what the record count is in the database. Now this is helpful. This is only 6,000 records, not too big, but if we find millions of records, this might be a place to go look at optimization for performance. And we certainly use this capability with some of our customers that we're actually working on right now to identify these areas where there are a large number of records and where there are performance issues to go in and enhance the information and generally improve the SQL to improve the performance. The other important thing to see here as we look at the schema is we have all of these entry functions in this case, and we have this table showing us what kind of access is happening by each of these. So we've got the access. So does it access it at all? Does it read it? Does it create? Does it update or delete? So we get the full CRUD information here for you for all of these functions. And these are columns that can be sorted, so we can find all the elements related to just one of these areas if we want to. So we see 3 that update, which is what we looked at before. Okay, very good. The other thing I will mention here is, without going back to the beginning, we can always change what we're searching here and identifying within the application and running our searches, finding the functions that are related. And in this case, we can actually build that path we talked about directly from the found function here. Let me do this actually at the schema layer. And we see the ability to get a direct path. So we've got the table, we've got that first Java. Now we may, in this case, I only chose one that had nothing in between, but we could have a large number of functions in between that table and the starting point. Okay, so dropping down, let's go ahead and take a quick look at document search. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go identify a path. Let's go from the menu again. And let's build our initial diagram. So we've got top level diagram, a couple of GUI functions and then sub functions. And we've got a number of sub-functions we can add. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look at the action diagram. Okay, so we've got the local code, custom code for the action diagram, and we've got the full code for the action diagram. Now we can use this search and search for anything we want within this particular view of code. But what I'm doing here is I'm looking for, as an analyst would be, what would be something that I would be changing, and then where would I want to understand other uses of that information. Could be a field, could be anything we want to view here. So there's some calls. Let's go ahead and use this. Okay. We're going to go back now to our document search and just do a query on all. So just to comment here, we can do a query on the action diagram, the full diagram, or the local diagram, either one, but we'll just use all. And there may be a lot of results since this is probably a fairly generalized search. And we see for each of those results, we have line information. We can click on and go directly to that line of code and see where that information is used. Now this is an elastic search, so you can see there's many millions of lines of code that have been built in here, and even though there's a large amount, this is pre-indexed, so we have very fast access to this information. So I've been through quite a lot. If you have questions at this point, let me know. I don't see anything in the chat yet, so we'll continue on. Let's talk a little bit about business terminology. Okay, so business terminology I mentioned earlier are your own terms that are business oriented that you're going to apply to many times the data, of course, within your application. And so in this case, we've defined a couple of business terms, and those inputs are connected to 4 different columns for that one, the account. And we see within those, we get a table or a schema and a column name. Because of the way this is built, we actually see both here. And then we see the same kind of information for this request number. Now, this particular application is our own application related to change requests. And we can see there's quite a lot of change request related data here. Okay, now that we have this, if we build this call graph, we'll just see that, in this case, everything is related to this business term and column. And as we always did before, we can always go back and add, okay, well, what is the schema view of this particular column? And we can always add additional function information. Again, choosing between the type of CRUD that we want, create, update, insert, and reads. So I'll just add the deletes in this case. And so now we see a particular path into that particular column, and we know it's related to this case request number. All right, going to focus in now on some specific analysis. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a quick look, get my field information. Okay, so start with the function here. And I should point out that we again can work through any type of function. If we want to limit the scope, we have that information here. We also, in this case, have the ability to focus in on language, depending on the languages within your application, and then name. You can also search by description, and then you can focus in on a range, and if you want for, okay, how much action diagram functionality are there. So let's just focus in on some local. Let's say anything more than 1,000 lines. Okay, so there's just a few with that size. And so now we know where the larger local custom code is within the application. And so we can begin to look at, in this case, where those functions, again, are calling, where they're being used, whether we go backwards or forwards within the application. I should mention also, self, when you choose this call graph, you can start with self, just starting with the actual element that you've chosen. Neighbor, of course, is just going to add that one layer below or above, depending on the direction you're going. And then we've got some other kind of mid-tier. Okay, very large. So what I want to show you, can get there relatively quickly, is that even though we have a very large application set here, so I can click start on this, and again, find an endpoint that I'm interested in. And then regraph that. And we see, it's a little small there. Let's raise the size up. So we've got just the path we're interested in. I'm gonna have to work on that refreshed. There we go. Give me here, take a minute to get this all put together. But the point is, you know, with thousands of connections, potentially even millions, you can identify just one path within your application and focus in on that path, understanding, you know, what's between, and then, you know, of course, having the ability to go in, check the action diagram. I also should mention we have the ability to add notes, and you know, we could always start with the graph at this point if we wanted. Okay, again, everything's searchable. Okay, I'm going to take just a moment here to open up another cloud instance. So what I want to talk about now is how we identify data flow paths within an application where we actually can see, in this case, statement information. So this is a slightly different version, but you'll see that this is a very powerful capability that will give us the ability to identify. In this case, we've got this loan amount field information, and we've run what's called a data lineage search or a field search against that particular field. And we have a couple of different runs that we've run here. Now this is versioned, so we can see over time how this set of data or field path would change. And I'm just going to run the latest one here and click the view. And we're going to get a view of, in this case, the field in the middle that we began with and we're searching for, all of the functions on the output side or the forward path on the right and the backward path on the left. So if we then double click any of these, we begin to see what's happening with this within this particular application. And we have, in this case, field information with structure information here. This is kind of a lower level definition, higher level definitions within the structure. And then we see that data is being written. Again, we're all within this one program, and it's being written to an extract file. And now we have stepped across the boundary to a separate program, and we're reading that same information into a new data structure. So we're able to trace across the program boundary, the function boundary, and understand how this data flows across the application. Let's go back and take a look at another one. A little more complicated one here, but similar information. So we've got our field a couple of levels above in the record. We've got a write of that data again out to a file. It's read in a couple different locations and brought into record. And then it flows forward and we actually see our field name again in this other program. So a separate program from the earlier program where this data is read in, and we see in this case data being moved. We might have calculations here, could be anything happening, and we see now just a specific path through the application that enables us to understand where this data is flowing from one point to another. And we can choose any of those beginning points. Going back to the, we see a number of different functions that use this data, and we can see all of the different paths depending on the starting and ending points for this particular data. Okay, any questions at this point? Okay, raising their hand. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to move back to my slides and we'll do a quick review of the portal that I mentioned earlier, customer portal. And again, I mentioned we have a portal currently. I'll just start here. And that customer portal provides you, our customers, with the ability to upload your models and your source code, and the ability to get access to CM evolveIT in a cloud instance where you can log in directly through remote app access with your own credentials. Okay, so this is a new UI that we're putting in place currently for the Plex particular version. And you'll see that entry-wise, you're going to add your application name. This is basically going to be the name of the database that we'll create. Any entry function names that you want to have, and any language information and any memo, any information you'd like to add about this set of code. Now, once you've done that, you'll be presented with a place to upload zipped sets of information. First, you got your local model, zip that up, and you can basically, this is obviously not live, but you'll click on this and just browse to it, and it will identify the location. Same thing for your source and any menu definitions. And then again, you're just going to click continue. And then I should said, prior to doing this, you will log into our customer portal, so you have an account, and we can communicate with you about your model and information. And also, we give you the opportunity here to add any other people within your organization that you would like to have access to this cloud instance, so we can provide them with their credentials once this database has been created. Once that is complete, you click submit, and that information will be uploaded to the CM First cloud site, and everything will be managed automatically beyond that. If there's any questions that we have about your source, your models that you've sent, we will request that through our support site, which will come back directly to you, and you'll be able to provide any input. At that point, once everything's complete, you'll receive your credentials and your link to the site, and you'll be able to log in and work with evolveIT with your actual code and your models. All right, we're a little short, but plenty of extra time here. If there's any additional questions, I'll be glad to take those. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up this session. Oh, I see we do have a question. So I think the question there is, where does this software run? So this software can run in your environment. For the most part, we find that it's much easier for customers if you upload your models and your source, and we build this in the cloud for you, and you can access it. Now, we'll provide in a scenario where you're purchasing access over time, we'll provide you the ability to update this, and you can choose how often you would like to update your models. And so again, these will be on servers in the cloud with the ability to interact with those. And you know, like I said, it could also run in your environment, but again, much simpler process for you if you send us that code and we build it. What else? Any other questions? Yeah, so another question is, what about the size of code and model limits? So evolveIT is based on a very up-to-date, I'll say, technologies, similar to what Google uses in their environment. So scale is really not a problem in terms of your applications and your model size. We can handle any model that you can create, I'm sure. And it may vary a little bit in terms of the time that it takes to get that model built into a database, but in terms of the ability to build that, should not be an issue at all. Any other questions? So I will say, if you have additional questions, you can send those to info@cmfirstgroup.com or to myself, roger.hammer@cmfirstgroup.com. And you can get more information about this on our website. You can go look at the white papers and some of the videos out there and learn more about CM First products, www.cmfirstgroup.com. Thank you very much for your time. Hope it was informative, and we look forward to talking to you more about your needs for analysis.